We already have discussed each and individual parts of the code, like calculation of the element stiffness matrix, element force vector, and from there how to get the assembled stiffness matrix and the global force vector, and imposing the Dirichlet boundary condition and getting the solution. So, once we have seen all the parts individually, let us look at the whole code and see how it works. So, at the beginning of the code, like from a line number 8 to 10, we have actually defined the material properties, like the in this case we have the Young's modulus, the Poisson's ratio, and the stress strain relation, that is the constitutive relation for the plane stress problem. Then we have discussed the body force, which is having two components in this two dimensional case, and for this problem in hand we have assumed them to be 0. Then we have defined the Neumann boundary condition. So, here we have 4 boundaries. Okay. So, let us go back and look at the domain. So, if we look at the domain here, we have 4 boundaries here, alright, where this left boundary is having Dirichlet boundary, and rest of the 3 boundaries we are numbered as 1, 2 and 3. So, these 3 are the Neumann boundaries. Now, even if they are Neumann boundaries, out of the 3, 2 are having homogeneous Neumann boundary. So, we do not have to calculate anything here, only this boundary over which vertical traction force is provided, there we have to find out its contribution. So, here if you see the Neumann boundary value, it has 3 components. Okay. So, basically corresponding to those 3 boundaries, first and second comprises homoline 0 and 0, and the last boundary is having the y component as -20, because it is acting downward. And then we have declared the Dirichlet boundary values to be 0, because x and y in both the direction the displacements are 0, otherwise you have to specify each of them. Okay. So, for the problem in hand both of them are 0. Then we discussed about the details of the finite element model, like how many, what is the order of the set function, that is 1 in this case, and then we have 4 nodes per element and 2 nodes per degrees of freedom. So, there are total 8 degrees of freedom per this element, per element. Then we have settled for 5 refinement steps, as I will be showing afterwards, alright. Then we have already discussed the declaration of the Gauss points and the corresponding weights for the 2 dimensional and the 1 dimensional problem. Then we have defined or calculated the values of the shape functions and their derivatives at the Gauss points, alright, and stored them in these matrices. Then we have run a loop over refinement step, alright. So, let us first discuss the rest of the part which is inside the refinement step. So, we went to each of the element which is running over a loop, alright, and then we calculated the element stiffness matrix and the element force vector, okay, as we have already discussed in the presentation. Then we have calculated the contribution of the Neumann boundary, okay. If that element is having any boundaries shared with the Neumann boundary, then we have to calculate the contribution and add to the corresponding part of the force vector. So, this is where the calculation of the Neumann boundary contribution ends, and then we calculated the global stiffness matrix, alright. So, now here once this assembly is complete, so then what we do, we end the element loop. So, basically at the end of this we get the global stiffness matrix and the global force vector. After then after that we calculated or we imposed the Dirichlet boundary, okay. We ensured that the Dirichlet boundary condition is satisfied, and finally we solved the problem k alpha is equal to b, okay, or k alpha equal to f, and we invert it using the backslash operator. So, this is basically the nodal solution that is obtained from the finite element model. So, once we calculate the nodal solutions, then what we did, we actually calculated the strain energy. So, how did we calculate that? We calculated using half alpha transpose k alpha. So, this is the value of the strain energy for this particular finite element model, and as you see the inside index is over refinement steps. So, what we are doing in each refinement step, we are calculating what is the corresponding strain energy, alright. So, in each refinement step we are increasing the number of elements, that is whatever the element number was earlier, in the next iteration or next refinement step we will be having more number of elements, we will be having more number of unknowns, alright, or degrees of freedom. So, those number of degrees of freedom we are storing in this variable in alpha. So, we want to see how this strain energy is changing, okay, with the number of unknowns, alright. So, here the loop over refinement step ends. So, in each refinement step we are solving the finite element problem. So, let us go back and look at this refinement step loop. Here what I have done, in each refinement step I have loaded a file, okay. That file, basically a mat file, contains the data of the connectivity matrix, the coordinate matrix and the boundary condition type, okay, that I already have discussed. So, those files are already there in the workspace. So, we are loading one by one, okay, and from that file we are getting what are the number of elements, the total number of nodes and the number of degrees of freedom. So, these are the informations we are getting from the mesh. Then we initiate the global stiffness matrix and the global force vector as empty, okay. So, there should be nothing, because in each refinement step we are calculating global stiffness matrix and global force vector, and how we are calculating, we are adding the element contribution to the global force vector. So, if it remains as non-zero in the earlier refinement step, in the next refinement step there can be problem, because then they can be added, but even then there will be an error, because the size of the kg is different in each refinement step, alright. So, once we have done this model, then let us go and run it over the refinement step. So, initially I will start with one refinement step, okay. So, let us make this as 1. So, if you remember, I started with only one element and kept on refining each of the elements with 4 child elements, okay. So, let us run it for refinement step 1. So, as we will see that we have here shown only the displacement in the y direction, alright, the strain in the x direction, sorry, the strain component xx component and the corresponding normal stress component, that is sigma xx. So, other strain and stress components are also calculated, but are not shown just to reduce the time, alright. So, here even if we have taken one element, in this result it seems like it has 4 elements. Actually that is not the case, we have only one element, and since we have taken 9 grid points in each of the elements while post processing, that is why it looks like it has 4 elements, alright. So, this is the displacement in the y direction, this shows the strain epsilon xx and this shows the sigma or sigma xx, alright. So, here there is nothing interesting. So, now let us increase the refinement step and let us see how this thing changes, alright. So, it will take a while to simulate this, alright. Particularly the post processing part is time consuming, because we are going to each element and taking 9 grid points and we are calculating the displacement in x and y and the strain, all the strain components and the stress components, alright. So, it will take a while. Now, once this is complete, what we are going to see is that the stress and strain components become very smooth. It is not like the earlier case when we used only one refinement step, alright. So, here you can see the sigma xx becomes very smooth, alright. It looks as if very smooth as the color gradient shows. So, let us look at the displacement, that is uy component. So, here you can see that, so let us switch on the color bar so that I can get the idea. So, as you see here, the blue part, the displacement, it shows as 10 to the power minus 5. So, it is minus, okay, minus 10 to the power minus 5, minus 2.5 into 10 to the power minus 5. So, this basically says that all the points in the domain is basically going downward, okay. Obviously, because as the load is acting vertically downward, so the beam, it is acting like a beam and it is bending downward, alright, which seems okay. Now, if I look at the displacement, okay, if I slightly look at this as a surface, as you can see, this is a smooth surface, alright, there is no discontinuity in it, because we have assumed the C0 continuity in the displacement. But if we look at the strain or stress, alright, let us look at the stress. Here you see that for the same problem, when we plotted the stress, you can see that in between elements actually there is a jump, okay, in the stress value. So, because the derivatives of the displacement are not ensured to be continuous, alright, because we use C0 continuity. So, the stresses have jumps in between elements, or that at the interface of the elements, which is not very realistic, because even when there is no load at the inter element boundary, or even if there is no material interface at the boundaries, even then there is a jump in the stress, okay. So, which is not realistic, okay. So, now we will see how to improve on it, okay, how to see or how to get a better stress distribution over the domain, alright. So, before going into the next topic, let me show you this plot where I have shown the number of unknowns versus the potential energy, okay, that I have already shown in the code how to calculate. Here if I put the data tip here, as you can see at the beginning we have only 8 unknowns, okay, because we have one element. So, we have 8 unknowns. At each node we had 2 unknowns. So, there are 4 nodes, so we have 8 unknowns, and initially the strain energy increases as the number of element increases or the number of unknown increases, but after some time it becomes flat. So, it says that even after this, if you continue to reduce the element size, or if you continue to increase the number of elements, the strain energy will not change significantly, okay. It seems like the solution has converged in some sense, alright. So, before appreciating a solution from the finite element simulation, we always have to ensure that the solution has converged, okay. Whether you use your own code or any commercial software, you have to ensure that the solution has converged, okay, by taking higher and higher number of elements. Now that we have seen how to write the finite element code and how to get the solution of our refinement steps, like initially we have one element and then we discretize the one element into 4 elements, and then each of the 4 elements also we divide into 4 elements, and we followed that strategy. And so, this strategy what it ensures that it becomes, the refinement becomes global, okay. Each element in the or each portion of the domain is getting refined, alright. So, that is called global refinement. Now, but if you look at the finite element solution, it may so happen that I do not need this refinement to be uniform throughout the domain. Maybe in some portion of the domain where the gradient is very high, I need to refine certain portion of the domain, but whereas in other portion where the solution is pretty smooth, there I do not need to refine that much, or maybe I can even increase the number of elements. So, if I have to adopt this kind of a strategy, okay, which will help us to reduce the number of unknowns, okay, and subsequently will reduce the computational workload, we have to see how to do that, alright, or how to understand that, or how to conceive that a certain portion needs more refinement and other portions does not need that much of refinement. So, to do that, we have to find out how to find out better value of stress, or how to obtain stresses, okay, which are continuous and gives a better result. All right. So, in order to understand that, I will go back to the one dimensional problem where a one dimensional bar problem was solved. All right. So, as shown in this figure, there is a bar, okay, having the modulus of elasticity E and cross sectional area A that can vary along x. There is a end load P0, okay, and a body load, okay, distributed over the length of the domain as Fx. Now, in this case, suppose if we take the degree of the shape function as 1, all right, linear shape function, as you have seen, these are linear hat functions. If we take the linear shape function, okay, for this problem in hand, then suppose the exact solution to the problem is shown by the blue curve here, all right, and the finite element solution, because we have taken linear shape functions, these are varying linearly in each of the elements, all right, which are demonstrated by the red line. So, here I have plotted the displacement versus x, x is the defining the domain, all right, and here we have all taken only 2 elements. Okay. So, here you can see the exact solution and the finite element solution are common at only certain portion or at certain points in the domain, that is at the nodes. Okay. So, it reveals that the finite element solution is exact, okay, at the nodes of a given discrete domain. All right. Now, this is possible when Ea is constant. All right. When Ea is not constant, this finite element solution is not exact, but is very close to the exact solution. All right. Now, if I take the derivative of the displacement and plot it over here, where this is denoting the epsilon xx in this case. So, how the strain changes with x? Here you can see the exact strain calculated from the exact displacement is shown by the blue line, and the strain calculated from the finite element solution are shown by the red line. Since we have used linear shape function, the derivatives are constant. So, the strain in a given element is constant. So, now as you see here, at the element interface there is a jump in the strain, okay. Finite element solution gives a jump in the strain. Now, this is not appreciated until unless there is a point force acting at that point, or maybe a change in the material property. All right. So, this is not practical then, and another thing is, and at other points of the domain except at these 2 points, okay, where the exact solution and finite element solution matches, except at those points, at all other points they have some discrepancies. Now, if we note down these points, okay, in the domain, it is found that these are basically the points, okay, corresponding to the Gauss point rule p equal to 1. So, these are basically corresponding to the point xi equal to 0. All right. All right. So, this is the first Gauss point. Now, at these points your finite element solution is exact. All right. But this is the case we are discussing where Ea is constant. Okay. When Ea is not constant, they will not be exact, but they will be very close. Moreover, it has been shown that as we continue to do refinement, at these points the solution, the finite element solution converges at a rapid rate, okay, or it converges at a rate which is similar to that of the displacement. So, these points are called the super convergent point. It means that at these points the error is decreasing faster compared to other points of the domain. All right. So, now we know that at these points our solution, means particularly the derivatives, the strain and stresses are better. Now, the same thing has been demonstrated here for degree p equal to 2, where as you see the displacements are accurate at the nodes, alright, and strain values are accurate at 2 points in each of the elements, and these are found to be the Gauss point for p equal to 2, alright. So, in this case the points are corresponding to xi equal to plus minus 1 by root 3, alright, that is the Gauss point. So, these points, as I said, these points are the super convergent point, means at these points our derivatives of the solution converges at a rate which is similar to that of the displacement, alright. So, now the idea is to use the data corresponding to these points, okay, and how can we have a better result or better stress value or strain value at other points of the domain, alright, or how can we extend these results, okay, which is obtained at particularly these points to the other points of the domain. Now, here I have taken 3 elements in the one dimensional case, okay. We call it a patch which are numbered as k, k minus 1 and k plus 1, okay, and the red lines denotes the stresses that is obtained from the finite element solution, alright. How can we obtain the stresses? Let me just tell you in brief. So, we have the finite element displacement as alpha I phi I, alright. We take the derivative with respect to x, we get the strain, that is u prime h, that is the finite element strain or the strain obtained from the finite element model. So, this x is the argument. So, at any point on the domain we can actually calculate the stresses and strains. So, once I calculate the strain here, we multiply the strain with modulus of elasticity to get the corresponding stress. So, these are the stresses that we have obtained for these 3 subsequent elements, okay, in the one dimensional case, and these red lines tells us the stresses that has been obtained, which are constant because we have assumed the shape functions to be linear, alright. So, the derivatives will become constant. So, the stresses are constant element wise. Now, as we have seen, in each element the super convergent point for p equal to 1 is basically the midpoint of each of the elements. So, we know the stress values at these points, okay, are pretty good, okay, or are better. Now, the question is, can I extend this betterness of the stress values to the other point of this patch, alright. So, in order to do that, so what we will do, we will try to fit a straight line through these 3 points, alright. So, this straight line I have denoted as alpha naught plus alpha 1 x, alright. So, this alpha naught and alpha 1 are unknowns that we need to find out, alright, and this stress, the stress that we will obtain from this function, we will call it as recovered stress. This superscript star denotes that this is a recovered stress, and the associated suffix k, that denotes that the internal element is the kth element, alright. So, we are doing it for the kth element. Now, once we define how this stress should vary in this patch, then what we have to do? We have to minimize some error or minimize the error between this straight line and the data points available. So, here are 3 data points available. So, we have to find out the difference between these stresses, okay. One is the recovered stress, okay, another one is the finite element stress. Finite element stress, we will just simply substitute the corresponding coordinates here and we will get the finite element, the stress obtained from the finite element solution, and the recovered stress will simply substitute x as xi, alright. So, xi is basically denoting the coordinates of these super convergent points. Now, here alpha naught and alpha 1 are still unknown that we need to calculate. So, we calculated the error at a given point, at a given super convergent point, we took the square of it, alright, and then sum over all such super convergent points. So, this defines the error function J2, alright. So, now we have to minimize the J2 and calculate alpha naught and alpha 1. So, if I write del J2 del alpha naught, then I will get one equation. So, can I do it for that? So, if I take the derivative with respect to alpha naught, because this is alpha naught plus alpha 1 x, I have to calculate the derivative with respect to alpha naught. So, what we will get? We will get twice of sigma star. So, sigma star is basically having alpha naught and alpha 1 x. So, I will write alpha naught plus alpha 1 x, alright, that is sigma star, minus sigma I. Sigma I's value is basically constant, alright. So, this is at xi and this is also at xi. So, this is a particular value into alpha naught, the derivative with respect to alpha naught will be 1. So, that is equal to 0, and here we have a sum over I equal to 1 to 3, alright, or k minus 1 to k plus 1, alright. So, what we are getting here? 2 we can eliminate, alright. So, what is the coefficient of alpha naught? Alpha naught, the coefficient of alpha naught is 3, alright, because we have only coefficient as 1. So, this is what we are getting, sum over I going from 1 to 3, alright, and here sum of I is here basically 3, okay, 1 to 3. So, sum of I is 3, and then this coefficient of alpha 1 is sum over xi. So, that is the next coefficient, and this is known. So, we will take it in the right hand side. So, that gives us sum over sigma hi. So, that is the right hand part. So, we got the first equation, then we write del J2 del alpha 1. So, we will get similarly the second equation. Now, this matrix, if you see, it is known because xi's are basically the coordinates of the super convergent points. So, we can get the matrix, and here is basically the stress values, okay, at the corresponding super convergent points. So, the right hand side is also known. So, this has been written as A alpha times A alpha is equal to B, alright. So, we can actually invert and get alpha as A inverse B, because these points are discrete points. So, we can actually in fact invert A. So, once we get alpha, the next idea is to calculate the recovered stresses at the internal nodes, alright. So, in this patch, these two are the internal nodes, alright. So, once we know alpha, we can put the corresponding coordinates of these nodes and we can calculate the recovered stresses. So, we will get the nodal recovered stresses at these internal nodes, alright. So, once that is done, what we will do? We will next take the next, consider the next element, and we will take these 3 elements a patch, okay, a patch consisting of these 3 elements, and we will again calculate the recovered stresses at the internal nodes following the similar strategy, alright. Like that we will continue and we will calculate the nodal recovered stresses at all the internal nodes or at all the nodes of the domain. Now, suppose if one of the node is a boundary, that is at the boundary, then how to calculate the recovered stress at the boundary? Okay, suppose there is no domain in the left and this is the node at the boundary. So, how to calculate the recovered stress at the boundary? So, it is, so in that case we have to consider this patch itself, okay, the first patch itself, and use the expression for the recovered stress and evaluate the recovered stress at that particular node. So, once we calculate the nodal recovered stresses, we will use the same shape function that we use to represent the displacement. We will use the same shape functions and we will express stress field as summation Ni sigma I star. Is that okay? So, we will get the recovered stress field in the whole domain, and it has been shown that the recovered stresses are better, okay, than the stresses obtained from the finite element solution in the overall domain, alright. So, the same idea can be extended for pth degree polynomial. Suppose if I am interested, say we have used say Lagrangian function for p equal to 2. In that case, recovered solution we have to express in terms of the quadratic polynomial, alright. So, for pth degree polynomial we have to extend it up to pth degree term. Okay. So, this is the expression for the recovered stress, and similarly we will define the error, that is the difference between the recovered stress and the finite element stress at these data points or the super convergent points. Just note down, when your degree of the shape function assumed for the displacement is increased, your number of data points or the number of super convergent points in each of the elements also increases. Okay. So, the number of sigma h xi, that also increases. So, suppose if I use p equal to 2, so in each of the elements we have 2 super convergent points. So, in a patch of 3 elements, then we will be having 6 data points. Alright. So, then we will write the error function as j, okay, following the earlier strategy. Then we will take the derivative of j with respect to alpha j to get the jth equation, where j varies from 0 to p. I am talking about pth degree polynomial. So, here we have p plus 1 number of unknowns and we have p plus 1 number of equations. So, we will go and solve, obtain the alphas, alright, which will give us the recovered stress in that patch. Okay. Likewise, I have to just change the patch, and again I have to evaluate the recovered stresses for the corresponding patch. So, once we recovered the stresses, the first idea is to obtain the recovered stresses at the internal nodes, alright, and that has to be extended for all of the patches in the domain. And once we get the recovered stresses, then we will go and obtain the recovered stress field by using the same shape functions that has been used for the displacement, okay, and using that we will interpolate the nodal recovered stresses in the overall field. Is that okay? So, now let us go ahead and look at the 2D problems, how to extend this idea. So, in this case I have considered 4 quadrilateral elements. Okay. We have assumed the degree p equal to 1, alright. We have assumed the degree p equal to 1. So, we have used bilinear shape functions for the displacement. We have obtained the solution of displacement. From there we have obtained the finite element solution for strain and stresses, alright. Now, here the black dots shows the nodes, okay, in the given patch where I have considered 4 elements, and this node, this internal node, the coordinate is written as xa ya, alright. So, of which actually we need to calculate the recovered stress, alright. So, how to extend the earlier idea? So, in this case, since p is equal to 1, so the super convergent points in each of the domain lies at the center of, okay, lies at the center of each of the elements, that is corresponding to xi equal to 0, eta equal to 0, alright. So, we know the stresses from the finite element solution at each of these super convergent points, alright. Now, we need to calculate the stresses, okay, or you have to calculate the recovered stress over the whole patch, alright. So, the recovered stress expression is written as this, because p equal to 1. So, we have taken only the linear terms. So, constant term linear in x and linear in y term, alright, where x and ya I already told it is basically the coordinate of the mid node, alright. Now, this recovered stress has been written as p times a, the bold font represents their vectors, where p is basically comprising of these monomials, alright, while x has been substituted with xk and y has been substituted with yk, where these xk and yks are basically the coordinates of these super convergent points, alright. So, I can say k equal to 1, k equal to 2, k equal to 3 and k equal to 4. So, these are the 4 super convergent points for this problem, alright. Now, so that has been denoted as pk, which is a row vector, and a is basically a column vector comprising of the unknown constants a0, a1 and a2, Now, what we did earlier, we defined the error between the recovered stress and the finite element stress, okay, the stress obtained from the finite element solution. At each of these super convergent points, we took the square of it and then sum over all the super convergent points. So, in this case m is equal to 4, alright. Then we tried to minimize j with respect to the unknowns a naught, a1 and a2, and we come up with a system of equations which is defined by a times a is equal to b, alright, where ak can be obtained as pk transpose pk. As you can see, pk is 1 by 3. So, this pk transpose pk becomes 3 by 3, and this has been done for each of the super convergent points, and they have been summed up, okay. Similarly, the b, you can say pk transpose sigma h. So, sigma h is a scalar, okay, the stress at the super convergent point. So, pk transpose sigma h, so that becomes of size 3 by 1, and this has been summed up for all the super convergent points, alright. So, that yields a and b which are known to us. So, we will go and invert the system of equation to get the unknowns a, and once we get a, what we will do, we will put the a here and obtain the recovered stress, alright. Now, here one thing you need to note, that then in that case pk xk has to be substituted with x and y has to be substituted with y, where x and y is the coordinate of any point in that patch, alright. So, if I put the coordinate of any point in the patch, I will get the corresponding recovered stress from this sigma e star. Once we get the recovered stress, okay, so what we will do, we will first find out, or we will find out in this case, we will find out the nodal recovered stress, okay, which is for this particular internal node. In this case, we have only one internal node. So, only internal node we will calculate the nodal recovered stress. Now, likewise, we will extend this patch to the other portion of the domain, okay, and we will consider this patch afterwards, and then we will calculate the nodal stress value for this node, okay. So, similarly, we will take different patches and we will calculate the nodal stresses, okay, of each of the nodes. It's fine. So, once we know the nodal stresses or nodal recovered stresses, so that is actually denoted by this. As you see, this is bold, it means that it is a vector. So, this is basically the nodal stresses, nodal stress vector, okay, of which is having the stresses of each of the nodes in the domain. So, we will take the shape function corresponding to the displacement that has been used for this case, and we will define the stress field. So, this is the recovered stress field in the whole domain, alright. That is how we obtain the recovered stress. So, this process of getting a better stress field in the overall domain from the stresses or data points, from the stresses corresponding to the super convergent points, is called the super convergent patch recovery, SPR, and this was actually demonstrated first by Zenkiewicz and Zhu, alright. So, once it is done, then I need to inform you that here this sigma I have denoted as scalar, alright, because in the 2-dimensional problem you have 3 stress components, sigma xx, sigma yy and sigma xy. So, for each of the stress component you have to repeat the whole process and you have to obtain the corresponding recovered stress field, alright. So, here I denotes this a particular stress component, alright. So, individually we have to recover the stresses for each of the stress components, that has to be done, alright. So, we can extend this idea for any degree polynomial, alright. Only thing we have to understand here is that we will be having more and more number of unknowns. So, suppose if I use p equal to 2, then in that case we have to use this many monomials, right. So, obviously, the size of p will be increased to 5 by 1. So, because we have 5 monomials, so obviously the unknowns will be of size 5 by 1, which will represent the recovered stress. Similarly, we will define the error that is the difference between the recovered stress and the stress obtained from the finite element solution. We will obtain the A matrix and the B vector. Okay. In this case the expressions are same, only the thing their size will be more, alright. So, we will obtain A. Once we obtain A, we will obtain the recovered stresses at the internal nodes, and then we will form the recovered stress field using the shape functions that are used to represent the displacement. In this case it is B equal to 2 times the nodal stresses or nodal recovered stresses, alright. So, let me show you that for P equal to 2, actually we have 9 nodes. If you remember, for Lagrangian shape function, okay, for quadrilateral element we have 9 nodes. So, in this case here we will be having this many nodes apart from the black dots, okay, and red dots. So, in this case these are the internal nodes. So, once the recovered stress is obtained, okay, sigma I star, we have to calculate the stresses corresponding to each of these internal nodes, alright. So, here there are 9 internal nodes, we have to calculate the stresses in 9 internal nodes, alright. One more point is, once we take another patch, okay, say suppose we have taken these 2 element this direction and these 2 element in this direction to form another patch, then from this patch, from the new patch again we will obtain some value of stresses at these internal nodes, alright. We will get a new value of the recovered stresses at these points. So, what to do? In that case what we will do, we will average them up, okay. So, at the nodes where we will have more than one recovered stress value, so we will take average of them. Same thing is true for the nodes on the boundaries also, alright. And since we have used P equal to 2, in this case there will be 4 super convergent point in each of the elements, that corresponds to xi and eta plus minus 1 by root 3, okay, if you remember. So, in each element we will be having 4 super convergent points. So, in this patch we have actually we have 16 data points, okay, or super convergent points at which we have to evaluate this finite element solution, or we have to take the stresses corresponding to these many points, alright. So, this method, as I said, is called super convergent patch recovery, and this recovered stress actually in fact helps in getting an error estimator, as we will be discussing subsequently. So, once we have the finite element solution, now we have to somehow quantify the error in the solution, because as we said that finite element method is an approximate method. So, we need to quantify the error, and based on that we have to also understand how to improve the solution. So, in that direction, so let us talk about the error in the finite element solution. So, here suppose EU is the exact solution of the problem, okay, and UH, okay, U with a suffix h or subscript h, that denotes the finite element solution. Then the difference between the exact solution and the finite element solution is defined as the error. So, U in this case, if it is the displacement vector, okay, ux and ui, and so is UH. So, the difference between them will be the error in ux and ui. So, it will be a vector E. Similarly, the difference between the exact strain and the strain obtained from the finite element solution we will define as the error in strain. So, that will also be a vector comprising of epsilon xx, epsilon yy and epsilon xz, okay, components or corresponding errors, okay. And similarly, the difference between the exact stress and the stress obtained from the finite element solution we can define as the error in stress. So, each of these parameters, these are actually vectors, and it can be a scalar also depending upon the problem, and this depends on each point on the domain. So, at some point the error can be large, at some point error can be small. even one component of the solution can be large at certain portion of the domain, whereas other portion of the solution can be erroneous in the another portion of the domain. So, it can be like that. So, this does not provide a means to quantify the error as a whole. Okay. So, in order to find out a scalar measure of the error, so what we generally do is suppose L is a differential operator operating on the unknown u plus b is equal to 0. So, that is the governing differential equation. So, in that case what we will do, we will find out the dot product of E with the operator L operating on E. Okay. So, dot product of these two. Okay. So, we will, because this will then become a scalar, this we will integrate over the whole domain omega and we will take square root of that. We will take the mod of that and then take the square root of that. So, that will be a scalar measure of the error, and it will also contain the information from all portion of the domain. Alright. So, if E we elaborate as u minus uh, so then expression can be written as u minus dot operator L operating on u minus alright. Now, in linear elastic problem, so what we do, we take the dot product of the strain vector with the stress vector, okay, that gives us the strain energy. But here it is basically the error in strain, okay, we are taking a component vector product or dot product with the corresponding error in the stresses, alright. So, that is something similar to the strain energy, but it is the strain energy corresponding to the error function E, alright. Similarly, we are integrating it over the whole domain of interest and we take the square root of that. So, that is what is called as the energy error or energy norm error, alright. So, that is what has been written here. So, this is called energy norm error. So, the strain, if I write as elasticity matrix inverse of it, then it becomes a compliance matrix times stress vector. So, that or error in stress vector. So, this gives basically the error in the strain vector, alright. So, this is same as the earlier definition, alright. Now, instead of integrating over the whole domain, so what we do in finite element method, as in case of element stiffness and element force vector, we calculate the same thing over each element omega k and sum it up over all the elements, alright. So, we will find out the contribution of each of the elements and we will sum it up over all the elements and then we will take the square root of that, alright. So, now this term, this integral over each element, okay, the dot product of the error in strain and the error in stress integrated over the particular element. So, that is basically the energy norm error in that particular element. So, we define as Ek, okay. So, this is the energy norm error corresponding to the kth element, square of it, okay, and then as it is the sum over all the elements and we took the square root of that. So, that defines the energy norm error, okay, of the finite element solution in hand. Now, everything is fine, but the only worry is in most of the real life problems we do not have the exact solution. So, we do not know what is the exact stress or exact strain. So, in that case the proposal is, instead of the exact stress we can actually use the recovered stress. So, as I discussed in the previous slide, sigma star actually represents the recovered stress. The recovered stress are basically the stresses that has been recovered from the finite element solution at certain points on the domain where we know that the stress values are very close to the exact, alright. So, those recovered stresses, okay, we will use instead of exact solution, because exact solution is not known or exact stress is not known. So, then the same thing if we obtain, so then in that case we will term it as energy norm error, but that is obtained from the recovered solution. So, we will call it recovery based error or you can say error estimator. So, this is referred as E star, Okay, wherever we will put star, it means that it is based on the recovered solution. So, this is what we will call as error estimator. So, this will basically give us the error in the finite element solution, taking into account the contribution of all the components of the solution as well as all portion of the domain. Alright. Now, how do we make use of it? So, let us see that in our earlier discussion, what we have done in a particular domain, we have taken a coarse mesh initially, then as the refinement steps proceeds, we divide each of the elements into 4 child elements. Alright. So, in that way the whole domain is discretized into smaller elements and we expect a better solution from the more refined meshes. Now, that procedure is called the global refinement, okay, where the whole domain is basically refined in each refinement steps. Now, in that case the problem is the number of unknown increases very rapidly, okay, because each element is divided into 4 elements. So, in a subsequent refinement step, the number of element becomes 4 times that of the previous step. Alright. So, unknowns also similarly increases. Now, it may so happen or it happens occasionally that most of the portions of the domain the finite element solution is okay, but particularly at certain portion the finite element solution is not acceptable. So, instead of refining the whole domain globally, what we can do, we can locally refine the elements where the error is more. Okay. So, that procedure is called adaptive refinement. Alright. So, based on the previous solution, we can actually identify which are the elements that are having more error, and accordingly we can refine only those elements, okay, to reduce the error in the subsequent refinement steps. Now, here I will be discussing how to identify those elements which are contributing to the error more. Alright. So, now let us look at this piece of information. This equation says that the energy norm error, okay, the square of it is equal to the energy norm of the system corresponding to the exact solution u, and this component denotes the energy norm of the system corresponding to the finite element solution. Or you can look at the properties of finite element solution, and it can be easily proved that the energy norm of the system, okay, square of it is actually equal to the energy norm corresponding to the finite element solution plus the energy norm error square. Alright. So, that we have used in the numerator in the next expression. Okay. So, this whole term that actually denotes the energy norm of the whole system corresponding to the exact solution. Alright. Because this is the energy norm corresponding to finite element solution, this is the energy norm error. So, the numerator is the energy norm of the whole system corresponding to the exact solution. We divided it by m. So, m is the number of elements in the mesh. Alright. So, in that sense we can calculate the average energy. Okay. So, we calculate the average energy, okay, by dividing the energy norm of the whole system corresponding to the exact solution by the number of elements in that domain and taking square root of that. Alright. So, we got the average energy, okay, associated with the problem in hand, alright, for the whole domain. Now, if we can ensure that all the elements in the mesh are having error energy norm or energy norm error less than certain fraction of the average energy norm, then it will be a optimal mesh. Alright. So, that is what has been written in the next expression, that energy norm error corresponding to the kth element, okay, this is the individual element I am talking about. So, kth element, if the energy norm error is less than eta times the average energy of the system, alright, then our solution may be acceptable. Alright. How can we calculate the energy norm error for a kth element? That I have discussed just in the previous slide. Alright. So, here, alright. So, we have already calculated the the energy norm error corresponding to kth element and summed it up over all the elements to get the total energy norm error. Alright. So, if the energy norm error corresponding to the kth element is less than eta times the average energy. Now, what is eta? Eta is generally taken as in percentage, I am saying it is generally taken from 1% to 5%. Alright, that is how it is taken in the literature. So, if it is say less than 5% of the average energy, the energy norm error of the kth element, then that element is fine and we do not need to refine that element in the subsequent refinement steps. Alright. So, now this expression has been rewritten here, where the numerator is the energy norm corresponding to the energy norm error corresponding to the kth element divided by eta times average energy. Alright. So, as we see, if the numerator is less than the denominator, then everything is fine for that kth element. So, now this value we are defining as xi k. Alright. So, it is associated with the kth element. So, if xi k is less than 1, then the approximate solution for the kth element is fine with us. Alright. But if xi k is greater than 1, it means that the kth element is contributing to the energy norm of the whole system more than the average eta times average energy of the system. Alright. So, it means that element is not fine and that element has to be refined subsequently. Alright. Why that element has to be refined? Because as we know that energy norm error is actually C times h to the power p. Alright. Where h is basically the characteristic length of the element. Okay. So, if I have a given element, so you can say if I have a element, the biggest circle that I can fit in, okay, diameter of that circle is defined as h, alright, and c is constant and p is the degree of the shape function that we are using in the finite element solution. So, if the energy norm error varies proportionally to h to the power p, so if I decrease h, so obviously my energy norm error will decrease. So, if that kth element is not fine with us, if its energy norm error is more, okay, so what we can do in the subsequent refinement step, we can divide it into smaller elements, so that the error contributed by that element reduces. Alright. So, once we identify the kth element, okay, so we can do it for all other elements. So, in the mesh we can visit each of the element, okay, compare the energy norm error of that particular element with the average energy norm, and we can identify or we can say that that element has to be refined subsequently or not. Alright. So, in that sense this xi k is actually helping us in identifying those elements. Now, everything is fine except that if I do not know the exact solution, how do I calculate E? Alright, because E depends upon the difference between the exact solution and the finite element solution, U minus UH. Alright, it depends upon the exact solution and the finite element solution, but we do not know the exact solution in for all the problems. Alright, in general we do not know exact solution. So, what we can do, instead of E, we can actually use the error estimator that just now I discussed in the previous slide. So, the error estimator is basically based on the recovered stress. Alright. So, in absence of the exact solution, we can actually use the recovered solution to estimate the error, energy norm error, that is represented as E star. And once we know what is E average, then we can use the algorithm that just now we discussed to identify the elements that are to be refined subsequently. Alright. Now, what are the strategies? Okay, how can we refine? Once we identify the elements to be refined in the subsequent refinement steps, then what are the strategies to refine those elements? Let us discuss in brief. So, in my earlier approach, what we did is we followed global refinement, that is, if this is my initial mesh, suppose this one, we solved the problem once and we actually calculated the energy norm in that case, and then what we did, we refined each of the elements into 4 pieces. That is the strategy till now we followed. Okay. All the elements were refined in that case, alright. That is what I called as global refinement. As I said, this strategy will increase the number of unknowns in a very rapid way, alright. So, what we can do to obviate this, we can make use of the information just now we discussed. We can identify only those elements which are contributing, okay, to the error more. So, let me discuss that issue. So, here once we identify the elements to be refined, suppose for this particular mesh, suppose since I have a reentrant corner, okay, and we know there will be stress concentration and all. So, obviously the error will be more near the corner. Suppose once we solve the problem once and we identify that these 3 elements which are adjacent to the corner contributes to the error more, alright, through the algorithm just now we discussed. Then in the subsequent section, instead of refining all the elements, what we will do, we will refine only these 3 elements that are adjacent to the corner. Okay. If our algorithm says that these are the 3 elements where ik is greater than 1, alright. Then again we will solve the problem, the 3 elements that are adjacent to the corner is contributing more, then again in the next refinement step we will refine only those 3 elements that are adjacent to the corner. So, this way we will keep on refining till our solution converges, alright. So, this way of refining some of the elements, particularly those elements which are contributing more to the error, this way of refinement is called element subdivision or enrichment, alright. So, that is the mesh coming out of that is shown in figure A, alright. So, now as you can see here, in this mesh we have certain nodes, okay, which are defined only in certain elements, alright, as you can see here. So, there are nodes which are defined only in certain elements. Now, what is the problem with that? See, the phi I associated with this node, alright, is defined only in these 2 elements, alright, but it is not defined in this element. Why? Because phi I corresponding to this node is varying linearly like this, okay, and in this element varying linearly like this. In that direction it varies like this, okay, linearly, but for this element there is no definition to it, alright, because this node is not defined in this element, alright. So, it means that that phi I becomes discontinuous. So, the associated u, that is the unknown, because you are writing u equal to alpha I phi I, alright. So, if phi i's become discontinuous, then u become discontinuous. So, that is not what is what we started with. So, in order to obviate that, so let me just tell you that these nodes are called hanging nodes, alright. These are defined only in certain elements, okay. These nodes are called hanging nodes, okay. These does not have a support in some of the other elements. So, the phi I is corresponding to these nodes are not defined in some of the elements, alright, and that is leading to discontinuous u or finite element approximation. So, in order to ensure the continuity, say alpha I in this node is equal to half of the alpha I and half of this alpha I, alright. So, why? Because suppose we are using bilinear shape function p equal to 1, then the displacement at this point will be half of the displacement at these 2 points, alright. So, you can say, because this is linearly varying and this point is at the mid point of these 2 points. So, we can actually use the interpolation and we can say that displacement here will be half of the displacement here plus half of the displacement here. So, these type of constraints we can impose, alright, and get rid of the degrees of freedom corresponding to these hanging nodes. Alright. So, this is an additional task that we have to you have to do. So, we have to formulate these constraints and you have to impose it during assembly. Alright. So, that is the problem with this enrichment. Another approach that we generally follow is, once we know xi k, we actually can calculate the new h that is required for that kth element as xi k to the power minus 1 by p h k old. Alright. So, h k is the characteristic length of the kth element in the old mesh and h k is the characteristic length of the new mesh at that point. Okay. That is related by xi k to the power minus 1 by p. P is the degree that we are using for the shape function in hand. Alright. So, using this, okay, we can actually calculate the new h. Okay. What should be the size of the new element, okay, at that point. So, that we can calculate. So, once we know the new h, what we can do? We can erase the earlier mesh, okay, and we can regenerate the whole mesh. That is what has been shown in B. Alright. So, making use of this relation, we can calculate the new mesh and we can call the mesh generating software and we can generate a new mesh, completely new mesh. Okay. As you can see, smaller elements are surrounding the corner, okay, and this this information has been provided by this piece of expression. Alright. Now, this approach is advantageous because in this approach we can actually achieve the convergence maybe in 1 or 2 steps. Alright, because we are calculating the h required to attain that energy norm error. So, in that sense we can achieve the convergence maybe in 1 or 2 steps, but whereas in this approach, this enrichment approach, alright, here there is no guarantee that it will converge in 1 or 2 steps. It can take 6 or 7 to 8 iterations or refinement steps. Alright. So, that is the problem with enrichment, but the mesh regeneration approach, it is very costly in terms of computational burden, because particularly in 3D problems, generating a completely new mesh, particularly in time dependent problem, generating a completely new mesh is very computationally expensive. Alright. So, that is why in most of the cases we use enrichment approach. Alright. So, with this I will end this lecture on elasticity and we will be discussing about the eigenvalue problem in the next lecture.